Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie video, taken from the HFY subreddit called Adrift, written by LgFatherAnthrocite. The link to the original will be down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. The space between stars was empty. In the most literal sense, this was untrue, but for all intents and purposes, there was nothing between the stars. Maybe some dust and gas, or the occasional rogue asteroid. Maybe even a stray planet blown out of orbit by a dying star's last gasp. But by and large, nothing. For that reason, almost no one spent time traveling through the interstellar space, preferring instead to use the slip space, warp space wormholes, and good old-fashioned dimensional shifting to get from one system to another. Why bother floating through the vast nothing, when you could fire up a fusion cores and bend, warp, jump across, or punch a hole through from one place to another? Almost no one. There were sophons that were looking for a nice little getaway, spending several months on what were essentially pleasure cruises in the placid waters of nothing. People who wanted to get away from one place to another without being detected and monitored by traffic governance systems that kept wormholes from colliding, warp spaces from subsuming each other, and slip space relatively free of debris and smashed ships. And humans. Humans loved superluminal travel. They had warp drives and slip space engines and even Nurgle compensator for a wormhole generation. But to them, nothing was cooler than powering up a singularity motor and using the mass of 1,000 star systems to gravity slingshot right past Einstein's theories and try to rip a hole in the fabric of space of the universe with mass and acceleration. Oh, they could use conventional travel too, but if they could, most would take the superluminal ship. Needless to say, the greater galactic community just sort of laughed it off as a kind of needlessly reckless behavior that humans would engage in regardless of location. No other species in the known galaxy had a fight or flight response that could so easily be tricked into action. Humans were the most skittish, intelligent creatures ever discovered, and they liked it that way. Boredom was an unknown concept to the galaxy in general, until humans showed up. Put one in a room with nothing to do, and it'll start trying to dismantle the furniture after a while. Put a human in with a repetitive task, and it happened even quicker. You'd come back after a single rotation, and the human would be sitting in a stack of desk panels, performing the repetitive task on the floor. Or, more likely, folding origami flowers out of birds and paperwork. But give a human a hull and a black hole, and they'll go tear-assing across the void like a teenager with his daddy's hunt rod, as one human had explained it. When pressed on why they would do such a thing, he only responded with the, "Because someone told us we couldn't, and now we can. We're going to." So, if you were, for whatever reason, suddenly stranded under the void, you could usually turn on a gravity sensor array and find a ridiculously powerful anomaly, or 5, indicating someone, a human ship, was speeding by over the empty dock. A distress call and a few days waiting and help would arrive. More than one failed warp ship was towed back into the system by human transport ships. It was weird really, they never got failed to help the stranded ship. Not once was there a story of humans leaving a ship behind, unless someone else got there first. Usually, they showed up anyway to check out and see if there was any way that they could help, offering supplies or equipment to aid the recovery. Ted was sitting on the bridge watching the screens. He was hauling a load of refined metals from the asteroid refinery to a system that needed raw materials. He could undercut most of the shippers because his ship required very little fuel. As it was powered by a singularity drive, it produced more energy than it needed to run all critical systems, and a healthy handful of optional ones as well. All he really needed was food and berthing fees. Sure, it took a week instead of a day, but the savings more than offset the delay. He was watching the stars slowly crawling towards the edge of the screen as he sped through space. He was sipping some coffee when blinking light popped up into the console. He pressed a few buttons and read out the display. an SOS from a slip spaceship that was stranded by a fault in the coolant recycling system. Ted messaged the ship that he was on his way, the authorities that the ship was stranded and that he was en route. Finally, he messaged the client, explained the situation and offered a 10% refund for the delay. After a quick double check of the coordinates, he changed his course and headed towards the stranded vessel. A day and a half later, the stranded ship was visible on the screens, and a few hours later, the two ships were completing docking procedures. Ted suited up and locked on a helmet to his pressure suit and then started the airlock cycle. He went through the airlock on his ship, through a universal docking ring and into an airlock on the disabled ship. The disabled ship started his airlock cycle, pumping the air into the chamber. Ted waited for the inner airlock to cycle open and then stepped through and removed his helmet, greeted by the captain of the disabled ship. Ted and several of the crew of the Jellinop's disabled ship spent about half a day rigging a tow cables and a coupler that would link the two ships. The cables were actually structural members that rigidly locked the two ships together in one solid mass. The coupler was a cable that allowed the syncing of the positional thrusters and coordinated the movements of the two drive systems. After preparations were complete and safety checks were done, Ted invited the captain to join him on the bridge of the Falcon, Ted's ship. Horus, a bastardization of his actual name, unpronounceable by humans, accepted. Ted eased the ships towards light speed, gently ramping up the speed over the course of a few hours to shake out the cables and make sure that there were no issues. Once they were sure everything was working, Ted accelerated the ships to superluminal speeds. Once they were cruising speeds, Ted asked Horus if he would like a beverage. Coffee, water, hot cocoa with marshmallows. Ted was raised right after all. After getting some beverages and setting into the command console, Ted and Horus started having the same conversation captains of ships everywhere had. How they got started and what was the wildest thing that ever happened. They spent the few days keeping each other company and monitoring the ships, making idle chit-chat and becoming friends. On the last day before they made port, after a long evening of ribald tales of shenanigans, they sat for a few minutes in silence, watching Sigma 9D, the star of the destination planet. So tell me, Ted, why are humans always using superluminal transport? Why not something faster or more reliable? Horus asked, munching a marshmallow from his mug of cocoa. Oh, hell, I don't know. I suppose we like the way the stars twinkle as they pass across the screen. Ted chuckled and sat in silence for a few minutes. There's a lot of old sailing traditions on Earth, in being mostly covered in water. When a sailor left port, his family would light a candle to keep it in the window, as a way to light his way home. They would replace the candle whenever it burned down, and kept it lit every night that he was gone. Sitting in a ship in slip space or inside a warp bubble, everything is covered in plasma. You can't see out. Dimensional shifting is like moving from one room to the next. But superluminal, you can take your bearings out from the stars and just cruise. Just like the original sailors. You can watch the stars get closer. Ted pointed to the stars slowly growing larger in the screen. The stars are like beacons guiding you to your destinations, like the stars themselves are calling you home. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you would like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, listed in the description down below. The easiest and best way would be to share this video and my channel as much as possible. I'll see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one until then. Cheers.